What narcissists do when they think you're too tough to control, manipulate, and dominate can be shocking and hurtful, but also very predictable. Knowing what narcissists do in response to your strength, courage, and personal power can give you an unfair advantage when dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. With this video, I'm giving you that unfair advantage so you know what to expect in advance and therefore, are better able to take good care of yourself when dealing with narcissistic people. Whether you're contending with your narcissistic mother, your narcissistic father, both of your narcissistic parents, your narcissistic sibling, your narcissistic boss, or anyone else you may encounter with high narcissistic traits. It's time to take your power back and thrive. Without all the extra BS the narcissist brings to the table. So, what can you expect when the narcissist realizes that you're too tough to control, manipulate, or dominate? When it becomes clear that you actually have a backbone, some dignity, integrity, and self-respect. You have standards. What happens when it's clear that you have the ability to discern that a thing is a thing, and therefore you're not buying what the narcissist is trying so hard to sell? In other words, you're your own person. You know your mind, and you aren't open to, nor are you available for manipulative control and power dynamics in any relationship. What happens when it becomes clear that their tactics have zero sway over you? You are immovable. What will the narcissist do? How do they handle that? Well, not very well. There are a few very predictable things that a narcissist will do when they realize you're too tough for the game they're running and aren't so wooed or easily swayed into their camp. Now, what's interesting is initially, the narcissist will likely be attracted to your strength, your confidence, your courage, and your personal power. But inevitably, they'll be triggered by it, and you'll be perceived as a threat. Something you do or say, usually something completely innocuous, will be enough to inflict narcissistic injury, trigger their pathological envy, and maybe even ignite their narcissistic rage. Now, whether or not they let on that's the case is another story. Regardless, suddenly, there's a target on your back, and often for no other reason than you just showed up being your fabulous self, unwilling to cow to the narcissist and their distorted perception of reality. Seriously, that's all it takes. The more empowered you are, the happier you are, the more confident, clear, and free you are, the more you will trigger the deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and insecurity in the narcissist and, therefore, the more you will be perceived as a threat to their fragile little ego and their false, phony persona. Furthermore, when it becomes clear that you aren't so easy to control, manipulate, or dominate, then your strength and personal power will become a big problem for the narcissist, which, of course, will frustrate and infuriate them to no end and, in their minds, will justify any retaliatory and destructive behavior on their part. So, know in advance that a narcissist will become frustrated when their usual manipulation tactics don't yield the desired results. As such, they'll become angrier, more demanding, or try to use guilt trips in an attempt to assert dominion and control over you. People who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism have to exert authority over others. They need to be in a position of dominance and control. They also need to create and maintain a perception of superiority, no matter how false that perception is in reality. Their fundamental way of showing up in the world relies on manipulation and projecting a false image, and as far as they're concerned, all is well as long as they're getting their way and getting their needs met. But the moment that's not the case, look out. Once they're not getting their way, once it becomes clear that they're not in control, once you're not complying, or God forbid you accidentally show them up somehow, like, for example, by simply being who you are naturally and authentically, well, what happens is, whether you realize it or not, their ego takes a hit, and sometimes a big hit. Remember, this is their stuff, not yours. Just like when discussing the family disease of alcoholism in the realm of destructive narcissism, it's important to understand that A, you did not cause it, B, you cannot control it, and C, you certainly cannot cure it. If they can't gaslight you into some form of submission, compliance, or feelings of inferiority, if they can't succeed in controlling, manipulating, or dominating you, if you aren't completely enamored with their false persona, phony kindness, and manipulative charm, then, given the limited tools they have to work with in their emotional and psychological toolbox, in their mind, they'll be left with no other choice than to target you. And narcissists, being the sneaky little cowards that they are, they'll probably do this behind your back as they work to manipulate and control how other people see you. When a narcissist can't control you, again, they feel threatened by you. And when they feel threatened by you, they'll have to deal with that threat to their false persona in the only way they know how, and usually, that'll mean working to control how others see and perceive you, how others feel about you. They'll literally go out of their way to sabotage your reputation and relationships with others, saying whatever it takes to make you look and sound as bad as possible. And the reality is this can be going on long before you ever even realize there's a problem. Why? Because, like I've said, narcissists are fake, they're phony, and they are liars. They lie outright and they lie by omission, and they do so with tremendous ease and zero remorse. So they have no problem showing up and pretending that all is well. For example, enjoying your hospitality and eating the food at your dining room table while simultaneously smearing you to smithereens the moment your back is turned. Nice people. The bottom line is narcissists need to be in a position of perceived superiority, dominance, and control. And although attractive and compelling in the early stages of the relationship dynamic, your strength and personal power are going to be very problematic with anyone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. It's just a question of time. You'll be seen as too difficult or too hard to handle, which is the same thing as saying too tough to control, manipulate, or dominate. And the reality is people who are seen as being too strong by the narcissist are indeed individuals who are not easily swayed by others. They're competent, boundaried, self-reliant, and clear individuals who are emotionally intelligent and personally developed enough to be living sovereign lives independent of the opinion of others, not least of which the opinions of the narcissist. The narcissist's opinion of them or anything else, for that matter, doesn't even register on the radar for a fully empowered person. Fully empowered humans think for themselves, act for themselves, feel for themselves, discern for themselves, fully trust themselves, and therefore, rely on their own good judgment. In addition, they tend to be grounded in their own good opinion of themselves, as opposed to going through life seeking approval and validation from the outside world. And needless to say, this level of personal empowerment is not only problematic but highly triggering for the narcissist. Now, with all of that said, once the narcissist is triggered by your strength, confidence, courage, and personal power, in addition to discrediting and smearing you to others, the narcissist will also jump at every opportunity to knock you down a peg or two. They'll happily point out any mistakes, flaws, failings, or perceived shortcomings, lest you think too highly of yourself, feel good about yourself in any way, or again, God forbid, anyone else sees you in a favorable light. They don't like that. They'll also hold your history and past mistakes you've made over your head with a bizarre sense of glee. This is just one more tactic they'll use to undermine your sense of self-worth and self-esteem. They'll take great delight in literally holding your past against you, no matter how much work you've done, no matter how far you've come, no matter how much you've grown or how much you may have changed in the years or decades since. Anything they can latch onto and run with can and will be used against you. They'll also take great pleasure in honing in on any vulnerabilities with deliberate intent to cause you to second-guess yourself, doubt yourself, and again, question your worth. In other words, they will deliberately manufacture and then amplify any feelings of guilt, shame, fear, inadequacy, and insecurity within you for no other reason than to keep you in line and feeling inferior when in reality, it's their own deeply buried, disowned feelings of inferiority that drive all of this nonsense. And unless you've been on the receiving end of this sort of emotional and psychological abuse, it can be pretty difficult to fathom that people can be this kind of cruel for no other reason than their own fear, shame, and insecurities have been triggered. But I assure you, it happens every day, all day long in narcissistic families, marriages, and other toxic relationship dynamics all over the world. So what's the solution? Well, to begin with, it's important to understand that your response to these tactics plays a crucial role in the outcome. While it's difficult, maintaining boundaries is essential. It's not about being tough for the sake of it, but about protecting your well-being while building and preserving your self-worth. That's your job. No one else is going to do that for you. When it comes to setting boundaries, you want to clearly define what you will and won't tolerate, communicate these boundaries to the narcissist, but then be prepared for the narcissist to test these boundaries repeatedly. And it's going to be up to you to stand your ground. Having a strong support system in place can provide you with the emotional and psychological support you need to withstand the narcissist's tactics in a healthy and boundaried way, while also giving you what you need to make real progress in your own healing and recovery journey. The bottom line is it's important to recognize that you have the capacity to overcome narcissistic abuse and heal from its effects. Your strength and resilience are powerful assets that the narcissist may attempt to diminish, but they are ultimately your greatest allies on this journey. Remember, you are not alone in this. Scores of people have successfully reclaimed their power and their lives, and you can too. Stay true to yourself, learn to set healthy limits and boundaries, seek support, and focus on your healing and recovery journey. You deserve a life that's filled with love, kindness, and compassion, a life that's filled with joy.